All right, it's a little after 1, so I think we're going to get started. I've still got some people rolling in, but we'll go ahead and move on anyway. Make sure we get to everything on the agenda. Just to start out, I just want to remind everyone that the webinar is being recorded, or the meeting, I guess I should say, is being recorded. And throughout the meeting, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat pod. I'll be keeping an eye on that. Or of course, just feel free to speak up and let me know if you have any questions that we need answered. Also, if you aren't speaking, I'd politely ask to keep the microphone on mute just so we can limit the amount of feedback that we've got going on this afternoon. So with that, we'll start off, just kind of run through the meeting agenda really quick because we did have some changes from what I had sent out earlier. I guess just for anybody that doesn't know, my name is Jacob Beeman, coordinator for the Capital District Clean Communities Coalition and transportation planner at Capital District Transportation Committee. I think we'll just maybe introduce yourself if you have any questions throughout the meeting. We won't go through everyone on the call right now. First up, we're going to have the slight changes. We're going to have a presentation from Jen Saponis of Capital District Transportation Committee to go over the Smart Communities Task Force update and some of the funding opportunities that are available there. Next, we'll move into a feature presentation from Ryan Wheeler at National Grid, and Ryan's going to talk about some of the New York State clean transportation programs that National Grid is offering in New York right now. After that, we're going to move into just kind of some Clean Communities Coalition updates, what we've done this year in 2020, and what we're looking forward to in 2021. After that, we'll wrap up with just some news around the table where you all on the call, all of our stakeholders can have the opportunity to kind of chime in and speak up and let us know what you're doing and working on currently. So with that, Jen, if you're free to go ahead, and if you want to just let me know when to change the slides.
Sure, thanks Jacob. Hello everyone, it's good to see all of you again. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the CDTC Smart Communities program and give you an update. Like Jacob said, I am a transportation planner with the Capital District Transportation Committee. I was formerly the coordinator of Clean Communities, so if you remember me, it wasn't that long ago. Okay, next slide. So many of you are familiar with CDTC's Smart Communities program. It actually grew out of Clean Communities work. We were first involved in a regional effort to submit on the US DOT Smart City Challenge in 2016. We chose to look into smart cities technologies and programming as a contract deliverable with the Department of Energy the following year, and we launched a separate task force and program in 2018, which allowed for the MPO to allocate federal planning funds to the program. So we solicited for projects and studies. We have made $75,000 in federal planning funds available for eligible projects. Again, these are planning funds, so they can't be used on any sort of capital costs, but for studies and development of guidance, they are eligible. So we have funded one project so far, and we currently have a solicitation open, and I pasted a link in the chat box for everyone. That's where you can find details on the program. Next slide, Jacob. So there are 6 eligible project categories. There's planning documents, studies and guides, data collection, compilation and publishing, I don't know why I can't say that, living laboratory types of projects, electrification, connectivity, and automation, training, education, and public engagement, and then other projects. We know that we haven't covered everything and that you may have better ideas. So if they meet New Vision's 2050 principles and the funding eligibility goals, we are very open to them. Next slide, please. So an example of a project that we did fund just in April, we released the final Municipal Smart City Street Light Conversion and Evolving Technology Guidebook. So this is something we worked on with the City of Saratoga Springs, and it is a decision-making roadmap for local governments. But again, it was specifically made for Saratoga Springs, but with the goal of it being useful for anyone in the Capital District. So as cities are looking to convert their streetlights to LEDs, we provided some options and recommendations for doing that, and then what other kinds of technologies can be integrated into LED light poles, and how lighting can be used to improve traffic safety, operations, and other things. We did also provide case studies from other communities that have done this already. So again, this program, our solicitation is open, and it is on a first come, first served basis right now. So it's just a rolling application process. If you have questions, please reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help guide you through the program or answer anything regarding eligibility or anything else. If you have any questions right now, I can take a few minutes to answer them.
All right. If no one has any questions for Jen right now, I did put her email in the chat box. If you have anything that comes up later on in the meeting that pops into your head that you want to ask her, you can find her email there, or let me know, and I'll be sure to pass it along. I think Jen has to pop off the call right now, so she won't be on later on if any questions come up, but feel free to reach out to Jen or myself on the Smart Communities Task Force programs. Thank you, Jen. Okay, next up we have, as I mentioned, our presentation from National Grid on their clean transportation programs. Ryan Wheeler will be speaking, and Ryan is the EV fleet electrification product owner with National Grid. And I will stop sharing my screen, Ryan, and I believe you have the ability to share.
Great. I just checking. Can you hear me, Jacob?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Sounds great. I'm pulling up my screen. Hello, everybody. As Jacob mentioned, I'm Ryan Wheeler. Happy to join you guys. Coming from National Grid. As Jacob mentioned, I'm our fleet electrification product owner, and focused within clean transportation within National Grid. And so my priority is to get as many vehicles on the road as possible, specifically fleet vehicles. So definitely looking forward to the conversation today. I think we have about 20 to 25 minutes scheduled here, and definitely encourage questions as we go through the document today. I also wanted to mention that my colleague Kate Carlio is on the line as well. She is a program manager on our electric vehicle team as well. Happy to have a conversation with you today. And as you know, the time is now for electric transportation, and we have a lot of great programs, and we kind of have a little bit of pride that we've got one of the largest programs east of the Mississippi on clean transportation. So definitely looking forward to having a conversation today. So I wanted to start out with National Grid's vision for clean transportation. National Grid is very committed in all our territories of New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island towards a clean transportation future. So from a corporate perspective, we have a net zero by 2050 goal for our corporate operations. And we also have a 100% light duty fleet electrification goal by 2030. But more broadly than that, we want to work with all of our customers throughout our territories to make clean transportation the primary means that goods and services and people are moved by 2030. So as I'm sure everyone is well aware, there are plenty of challenges in the climate change landscape today, and clean transportation is the biggest challenge in the state of New York today. I do also want to mention that a big reason why I'm passionate about fleet vehicles in particular is regarding local air pollution. I think a lot of the clean transportation discussion has focused on the greenhouse gas emissions piece and the CO2 reduction, but especially in our current year of 2020, air pollution and environmental justice has been a core priority for us. And so air pollution has substantial health impacts, obviously, and medium and heavy duty fleets in particular have a disproportionate effect on those local air pollution. So we as National Grid are already collaborating with a lot of the fleets in New York State, and look forward to continuing to push those as fast as possible over the next 10 years. A little bit of national context, because it's sometimes helpful to kind of put it all in perspective. But as I mentioned, New York is a very active in the electric vehicle space. California gets all the headlines, rightfully so. They have a state that's had a lot of mandates around clean transportation. But New York is catching up. So we've got 20% of the approved filings from a utility regulatory standpoint, as well as 30% of the approved EV investments. So as a state, there's been more than $750 million approved for investment in EV charging infrastructure. And most recently, that's from the order that came out from the Public Services Commission this summer in New York, and they approved a statewide electric transportation program that was $700 million. So very substantial investment in the future of clean transportation in the state. So a little more detail on that program. So as I said, it's a statewide program for $700 million, and it's got a few different components that apply to a lot of different vehicle types. The main portion is the commercial make-ready portion, and what we mean by make-ready is everything that's related to the electrical infrastructure in order to enable EV charging. So make-ready does not typically include the actual charging station itself, but it includes all of the wires and conduit and trenching, and transformers and other equipment on the site, both on the grid side and on the customer side, that enables that EV charging. The statewide program also has a lot of future proofing built into it to oversized equipment, so that we don't have to go through this process again in a few years. The concept of future proofing is really important to kind of, as we're thinking about a long-term future for the state, you don't want to have to retrench a parking lot, rip up the infrastructure that gets put in to install larger conduit, et cetera. So the state has a hefty budget there for future proofing as well. Fleet assessment services. The commission mandated that we would provide fleet assessment services for fleet customers in the state. And what that entails is two main components. One is a site feasibility assessment. So looking at the power infrastructure for that site, whether it's a delivery company or a school bus or a municipal government fleet, essentially looking at the power grid and determining how many vehicles could be supported at that site. The second component of that assessment is a rate analysis. And so a lot of these fleet customers are not generally considered a large electric customer, especially when compared to other industrial customers in our territory. But, for a lot of these larger vehicles, when they start to electrify 5, 10, 20, hundreds of vehicles, they very quickly turn into a major load center for grid. And so for National Grid. And so one of the goals of the fleet assessment services is to do some of those rate analyses for these customers as they're thinking through the electrification process. As I mentioned, in terms of getting public vehicles on the road, another major component of the program is transit agency make-ready. So specifically, National Grid is focused with CDTA here in Albany, as well as the Niagara NFTA over in Buffalo. Those are the two main transit authorities that are receiving make-ready funding from the state in our territory. And also exciting is the Fleet Medium and Heavy Duty Make-Ready program. So that's a lot of words, but essentially it's $15 million devoted to getting infrastructure put in place for the big, heavy, medium, and heavy duty trucks and buses. So anything larger than kind of the Ford Transit vans, class 3, 10,000 pound vehicles and higher would receive funding for that program. And then the state also approved $85 million of innovation prizes. So looking at the innovation around personal mobility, community mobility solutions. How do you minimize the overall transportation needs of a community, and projects of that nature? So now kind of zeroing in on National Grid's role within this, obviously as I think we're 23% of the state, and so we kind of get our share of that 700 million. The Make Ready program, our budget is essentially 16,000 charging plugs across our territory. And the fleet services, we're launching those site analyses, as well as a fleet microsite that helps fleet customers through that electrification journey. And we'll talk more about it in a couple slides. But as we gather more and more feedback from our fleet customers in Massachusetts and Rhode Island and in New York, getting us involved early in the process is a crucial step, because even just moving a charger 100 feet can sometimes mean a dramatic difference in costs for those charging stations. And we've already touched on the medium and heavy duty program. So maybe I'll just pause right there. Are there any questions on the program? I maybe want to get a sense of people's familiarity with this program, or if any questions come to mind here. David, looks like maybe you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I sent you a question, but the question is for the fleet assessment services. What is the cost to the customer to get that service?
$0. So it's a service that we're providing for the customer that reach out to us. So we have, from a distribution grid planning perspective, we have a what's called an EV site hosting capacity map. So we can go into a specific distribution line and see how much capacity is at that site. So if a school district or a delivery company is curious about whether they can electrify, 5 chargers at their site, we'd be able to look at their site on our map and tell them, how feasible that is from a grid infrastructure perspective.
So there's no cost.
Correct.
What sort of time? How long does that take roughly from the time of the ask?
Yeah, so we're in the early stages of doing this version of the fleet assessments, but I think anywhere in the kind of 2 to 3 month time period. Okay. So we're kind of honing in on the process with our engineering team, as well as our rate analysis team. But for this portion of the New York program, it's a relatively light touch assessment service to try to get kind of a broad exposure to a lot of different fleet types across the state.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep. And another thing to mention is part of our proposal for our latest rate case that is currently active with the state regulators is we also have proposed an expanded fleet assessment service, which would also be $0 cost, but it's built upon our experience in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, where we have partnered with a third-party consultant to do a much more comprehensive analysis of a fleet and their electric vehicle needs. So kind of going vehicle by vehicle, route by route, and determining what vehicles are available in the short term, medium term, and long term to help those fleets electrify. In addition to the vehicle component, there's the charging station component. Should you do all your charging at the home hub, or should you do charging en route? How fast should those chargers be? Where should they be located? Those types of things. And as I said, that's pending approval from regulators. So we're still asking for permission to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just quickly cover this. I think this seems to be mostly a recap for a lot of folks, but obviously clean transportation has a lot of benefits, but our program in particular helps get chargers installed for less. The capital cost for a lot of customers prohibits them from moving forward on vehicle electrification. So we as a public utility, feel our role is to help lower that upfront cost so that the customers can see that long-term savings and help the state meet our clean transportation goals. It allows our customers to take climate action and tell the community that they're invested in this, that they're really committed to reducing air pollution and reducing CO2 emissions. Yeah, and then on the public health perspective, especially for downtown areas and congested areas, you think about delivery trucks and school buses and fleet vehicles, that are idling in these congested neighborhoods. There's a huge opportunity to reduce the pollution from those vehicles. And then, part of the program is to get more customers and more clean transportation entities in our state. So, pick your big company, especially this time of year with the holidays next week. There's one company in particular that does a lot of delivery services that's trying to electrify a lot of their vehicles. And so, the idea with these types of programs is to get a lot more clean trucks on the road and delivering goods and people. So without going into too much detail, I've already mentioned, what make ready means, but, when we say make ready, there's the utility side infrastructure. So that's the distribution network, the transformers, the meters, other things on the utility side of the meter. Then there's also infrastructure on the customer side. So going from the meter to the building, essentially. And so, doing the boring, the trenching, laying the conduit in order to get the power from the pole to the charger. And then, customers also need to install the charging equipment itself, along with other kind of soft costs. So the maintenance of those chargers, sometimes there are network fees. There are other fees that sometimes come into play, to get the payment plan in place for those chargers, et cetera. So where we as National Grid focus in New York is on the make ready infrastructure piece. I will try to spend very little time on this, but we have different funding levels for how much funds, how much funds there are available for charging stations, depending on what type of charging solution it is. So for fast charging, direct current fast charging in disadvantaged communities in New York, we are approved to provide up to 100% funding. But in communities that are outside of disadvantaged communities, we can do up to 90% for publicly accessible locations. And for private applications like delivery fleets or workplace charging, things of that nature, we can provide up to 50% support. So drilling in a little bit.
Hey Ryan, I've got a quick kind of question or comment maybe. So on that previous slide, those incentive levels would be for light duty fleets only, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure I was.
And we'll, so I wanted to make sure we get to the fleet part as well. So trying to get into the fleet discussion here. Another slide that we don't have to spend a lot of time on, but one of the key advantages the National Grid has is that our rate filings are kind of on a rotational basis across Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York. So we're in a great position to be able to take the lessons learned from other states and apply it to our next program, essentially. So we've taken a lot of the lessons learned from Massachusetts and Rhode Island and applied those to the programs in New York. So those fleet assessment services are the best example. In Massachusetts, we've launched a program to allow 100 different fleet studies for public fleets. And so we're applying something similar in New York for that. We also have gained a lot of experience from all the different chargers that we've installed throughout Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So fleet electrification. So Jacob, this is a little bit to your point where gathering all the feedback from customers as well as other industry stakeholders that we interact with all the time throughout our daily job is to really help fleet customers understand how big of a change this is. If you think about whether you're a school bus fleet operator or a delivery truck operator, you're going from decades of a consistent approach around maintenance and operation of these vehicles. And now you're changing the fuel, you're changing your electricity rate, you're changing a lot of things around the different types of maintenance that you have. You're changing the way you have to think about safety procedures, both for the charging equipment as well as charging of the vehicles. And so there's just, in short, there's just a lot of uncertainty for fleet operators. And so the main goal of having the, the fleet assessment services and our team that's focused on fleet electrification is to provide that single point of contact and a kind of a guide to help fleet customers through the entire journey. So as folks like to like to joke, it's sometimes it's really hard to find that right person at the utility to answer your question. So the idea here is that we would have a person that's dedicated to, we have people that are dedicated to fleet electrification, help you find the right engineers if you have specific questions around, the power components, or, questions about bills or rates or any other questions that kind of come up as you're thinking about planning your electric fleet. The next piece is kind of the utility, the infrastructure side. So the make ready, like it's really important for us to be involved early so that we can understand the needs of that site compared to the available capacity of that site, and have a better understanding of how long it would take to get power to that site and how expensive that might be. And then the other piece that I haven't touched on yet is kind of on the vehicle side. So another program that we've.
Hey, Ryan.
Yep.
Sorry to cut in. It looks like David's got a question.
Oh yeah. Hey David, sorry, your picture is a little too small to
Hey, well, actually, I'll just jot in too, David and anyone else for participants. If you want, you can use the chat box to kind of send me a message, and I'm trying to moderate that. So if you send me a message directly, I'll try to jot in that way, because it's probably Ryan probably has a hard time seeing it while he's sharing his screen. So, but go ahead, David.
Okay. Just before you get off this slide, in red print down here near the right bottom, it says school bus rebate pending approval.
Yes.
LMI school bus. Can you talk about that before you get off the slide?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely happy to. That's a program that's kind of a near and dear to my heart for sure. Is one of the main goals that we proposed in our rate case is to provide a rebate for the incremental cost of a school bus from a diesel bus to an electric bus. So rough numbers, a diesel bus is $100,000 to purchase, and an electric bus can be $350K plus. And so we've proposed to the state that we can cover that incremental cost of $250,000 to $260,000 as a rebate to schools that primarily serve disadvantaged communities, LMI communities. And so as part of our proposal, we proposed funding 25 of those buses to help spur the investment in that sector.
This is separate. This is a special program within NYT VIP, or it's a separate?
It's separate. So it's in addition to the New York TVIP. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. So again, I think thinking about National Grid's vision for the state, school buses in particular are something that's a truly impactful thing to change in the community. When you think about the impact on the health of students, the air emissions of the community that it's in. You only have to sit at one traffic light with 10 diesel buses that are empty, just idling and seeing the diesel fumes coming out to get a sense of how big of an opportunity that is to show that sector that it's possible to electrify quickly.
Is this program live now?
So we have submitted our program to the state, and we're in our the rebuttal and settlement process today. So we actually submitted yesterday our rebuttal to the state regulators, to the PSC, that we firmly believe in this program for those 25 rebates for school buses.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one double click into the fleet assessment services in particular. We've already touched on this, but the site feasibility analysis is really about all about the power system demands that you would have for those vehicles. There's a lot of considerations about do you install 5 slow chargers or 2 fast chargers, right? And so thinking through that process with customers and going down the road of the feasibility assessment. In addition, with the price of electricity, these customers are very used to bulk purchases of fuel. Now they're moving to an environment where there are time-sensitive rates of electricity. You can if you're charging all your vehicles at once, you can get a very high demand charge that has a very different impact on your bill than you're used to. So, you know, a part of this assessment service is to walk customers through how your fueling bill is going to change as you switch to an electric vehicle. And then what we've proposed that is, again, in that part of that rebuttal, is this expanded fleet assessment services. So, you know, kind of stepping away from the power grid and moving into the vehicles and the chargers, and, you know, kind of a more holistic approach to navigating how do you electrify your fleet, both for, you know, the grants and incentives that are available, you know, what vehicle types are available, how does your total cost of ownership change, you know, things like that as part of the expanded fleet assessment services. And Jacob, to your question a few minutes ago, you know, that funding level that we talked about was for the light duty Make Ready program. On the medium and heavy duty side, so again, this is all vehicles that are more than 10,000 pounds, including school buses. The state approved $15 million of funding for national for all of the joint utilities of New York. National Grid got 40% of that because we're 40% of the registrations that are eligible for this program. And this program is to cover the cost of the utility side upgrades that are required. So again, this is to help those customers that are operating a fleet, whether it's a school or other medium and heavy duty fleet, that requires grid upgrades. You know, the cost can get pretty substantial to increase the power needs at that site. So rather than having those individual customers bear the burden of that, you know, the state has made the right decision, which is to say that, you know, National Grid can help fund that to help get those early adopter vehicles on the road as quickly as possible. Which goes back to, you know, the clock is ticking on changing our transportation emissions and meeting those state goals. One quick thing, since David, you already mentioned the New York TVIP. In order to be eligible for that program, you do have to be participating or show that you are going to participate in that New York TVIP program to be eligible for that. And the main goal of that truck voucher incentive program is to replace older diesel vehicles. And so that's the idea, is that you know, it's a complementary program to you know, you get funding for replacing your old vehicle, but you also get funding to upgrade the power grid at the same time. And Jacob, I know we're getting close on time, so I think I'm almost done. I don't want to go too long here. I think you're on mute, but I didn't see a thumbs down. So
yeah, sorry. Yeah, 2 or 3 minutes left. So I mean, don't
Sure.
feel rushed, but yeah, that's about what we're looking at. Thank you.
So a little bit of a, you know, exciting plug for our team. We are launching a fleet-specific website for National Grid customers that's going to focus on a lot of what we already talked about, which is the vehicles that are available, the charging programs that are available for fleet customers, funding resources that are available, and then case studies from Massachusetts and Rhode Island about, you know, how converting to electric fleets can reduce the total costs, reduce the maintenance, reduce the fuel costs. All of those things are included in a lot of those case studies that will be available for fleet customers. And David, you asked about the fleet assessment program. At this site here, the joint utilities have a customer interest form where you can download that form and send it to us. That gives a kind of an overview of the fleet, you know, the number of vehicles, the approximate mileage, you know, the decarbonization goals that fleet might have, and that allows us to kind of you know, digest that data and then reach out to that customer to help start the process for that feasibility assessment, as well as the rate analysis.
Great.
Yep, go ahead.
I got a question. Jacob, you see, I got a question.
I did. I was going to let Ryan kind of wrap up the presentation. Yep. Then maybe we could ask. I'll ask that at the end, and we can wrap up with that.
I'm done. The last slide is to just you know, have a, you know, provide the resources of how you can get in touch with us and how to set up the next steps. So without a doubt, would love to hear more questions and how we can help engage across everywhere across our territory, essentially. So it sounds like maybe got another question, David?
I do. This is a vehicle to grid for electric school buses. I don't quite know how to phrase this. What is National Grid's willingness to put their toe in, get into vehicle to grid in the capital region with electric school buses? But presumably, particularly in the summertime and so forth.
Yep. Yeah. So definitely a huge opportunity. We actually had another. We have kind of an innovation day for our team, and yesterday we had another great discussion around the opportunity around vehicle to grid. There's kind of the short answer and the long answer. The short answer is that for all the funding opportunities that we've talked about so far, is for vehicle charging. In terms of getting transportation on the road and reducing the air emissions from that transportation. What I consider kind of the second wave of electric buses, school buses in particular, is that V2G component. So, as you talked about, the summer load in particular is a fantastic opportunity in terms of discharging back to the grid, providing reliability for the grid in that location, even providing resiliency for communities during outages. There's all kinds of opportunities for school buses there. This is another example where we have a great kind of tie into other territories. In Beverly, Massachusetts, we've actually just recently started a project around V2G applications. So working with a partner there to think through business models and how it applies to V2G applications. So kind of going away from that, kind of dollar per gallon thinking to let's think about dollar per mile and, dollar per battery life and kind of how does that change for school buses as they become electrified? Because now fleet operators are having to make that trade-off between, do I use this battery to provide school transportation or do I use it to save and then discharge back to the grid? So that program will lead to a lot of lessons learned, a lot of areas for us to continue to explore. And that, the Massachusetts program is going to help inform our next rate case in Massachusetts, but it's also going to help us, gather the right information from our school customers in New York. And more directly to your question about the Capital District, I would point to our partnership with CDTA. We were the first 4 electric buses in upstate New York with CDTA. So far, they've had a great experience with those buses. They've performed as expected, and customers have very much been pleased with the performance of those buses. And I think so another portion of that partnership is what we're calling a digital lab. So helping analyze the route data, analyze the performance of those buses, looking at the kind of power consumption, looking at some of the seasonality of the performance of those buses, and I without a doubt see some potential to do that with school districts in the area, where once kind of the school buses are deployed, the chargers are put in place, the buses can be put on the ground, doing kind of a collaborative partnership to think through what are some of the use cases for those buses in kind of the medium to longer term from a V2G perspective. So that was a good example where even you just say 3 letters and I can talk for far too long. V2G, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely an area where I think National Grid continues to have a spotlight on and want to get more collaboration with our customers.
Thanks.
That's great. I'm not seeing any other questions, Ryan. I did want to make sure, so I mentioned the meeting is being recorded. So I do plan on posting this on our website. You have no, do you have any problem with us making the presentation public?
Don't think so, no.
Okay, great. So I will post this if anyone wants to kind of revisit it and draw information from it later on. So I'm going to.
Hey, Jacob.
Yes.
It's Kate. Just one quick thing, if I could add. I'm not sure exactly which organizations everyone on this call is from, but if anyone here is thinking, I don't have a fleet, so I'm not really interested in this, I just want to mention that we do have the Make Ready program for light duty vehicles. That's not just for fleets. So if you just had an interest in adding a charging station at your facility, whether it's for fleets or whether it's just for your customers or whatever, we have things to offer you too, and we can certainly talk longer if that's something people are interested in. So.
And that's any, it needs to be public to take advantage of that?
No, it's a more generous offering for Exactly. Thank you. More generous offering for public, but there is still incentives for if they are not accessible by the public.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Thanks.
Kate.
Yes, so just again, please feel free to reach out, and we would love to have any and all collaborative conversations around how to advance clean transportation. And definitely appreciate the time today.
Actually, so I think there's one more question from David. Is the Make Ready program operating now or yet to come?
Yes.
So we're up and operating.
To both the light duty program, light duty program, and the medium and heavy duty pilot. Both are accepting applications. And as Kate mentioned, it's up and running. The simple answer is to go to the website. There's an application link there, and you can get the process started with kind of providing your details, and we can reach out and start the process.
Okay.
And actually, I think I might have a more So here, the steps to apply to that program. You go to the website. You can submit your application. We work with you to think through the design, put you in touch with developers, charging station operators, charging station providers, help you through the construction process, and then activate the chargers. And so, the EV program team can help guide through that whole process.
Great. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the information. It's great hearing from you.
Yeah,
so I am going to take over the screen here. Okay. Okay, so with that, I think everyone can hear me now. We are going to move into our Capital District Clean Communities Coalition updates for our 2020 contract. So here we've just kind of, each year we get a contract with the Department of Energy to work on some interactive tasks, primarily working with education and outreach with our stakeholders, kind of in these specific areas. We work on listening sessions, education and outreach events that are focused around alternative fuels and clean fuel technology. We also work on doing some site visits so we can bring our stakeholders to alternative fuel fleets and technology resources that they can then learn from and bring back to their own fleets. And just kind of also some general training and education and on alt fuels. So I'm going to go into a little bit more on what we've worked on this year. So I'm going to start out with our alternative fuel stakeholder listening sessions. So these are listening sessions where we sit down with individual stakeholders to try to collect their thoughts on how their particular alternative fuel fleet is performing. And we kind of want to get the perspectives of drivers, fleet managers, and kind of their opinion on any of the data that they've collected to date. And really the idea is then we sit down, we kind of take detailed notes on the conversations and then bring that back to the Department of Energy so that they can then kind of analyze what we've said. And then they actually reach out directly with vehicle manufacturers or infrastructure providers to try to work through any issues that kind of fleets in the field might be having to hopefully then improve kind of future iterations of that vehicle or the technology. And so again, there's coalitions throughout the country that are kind of always doing these same types of tasks. So it's not just us, and it really allows the DOE to have kind of a really kind of wide perspective on what's happening with alt fuels throughout the country, and trying to make that improve the technology and make it better by working with the OEMs. So this year we had 2 alternative fuel listening sessions. First was with Capital Car Share, who currently has 1 BMW i3. We held this listening session in July. And again, the goal was to learn more about what works and what doesn't you know, with respect to electric vehicles and a car share. So we generally got pretty positive feedback from the users of the car share and the electric vehicle in particular. You know, we did kind of tease out a couple different pieces of information. There were some users on the call who hadn't driven the electric vehicle before, and you know, of course, it came up. Range anxiety was a reason that they haven't kind of taken the step to try the electric vehicle, and kind of have stuck to the traditional gasoline vehicles that the car share has. But throughout some discussion, you know, it wasn't, you know, we kind of learned that it wasn't highlighted really that the i3 had a gasoline backup. So once learning that, a couple folks on the call felt much more comfortable with trying out the electric vehicle. You know, from the perspective of the car share themselves, they hadn't really, didn't express much kind of issues with managing the electric vehicle any differently than a traditional vehicle. Haven't really had any instances where the vehicle's been left stranded. You know, one of the main pieces that the car share kind of mentioned was that it's actually been a huge marketing tool for them. It has vinyl graphics, obviously stating that it's part of the car share, but also that it's an EV. And, you know, I'm sure that some of you have seen an i3. It's kind of a funky looking car. So when they're out and about, it seems like folks that are driving it are getting a lot of questions from other people about the car and about driving it. And CarShare has confirmed that they've gained a couple riders or users purely out of kind of the advertising that came from the electric vehicle. So, excuse me, a lot of positives there. The next listening session that we held was with CDTA and their electric bus pilot that they're operating. Currently, CDTA has 4 electric New Flyer buses. And again, this, you know, the goal of the listening session was to really get feedback on how the buses are operating and really the overall performance of the electric bus fleet and charging infrastructure. So again, mostly positive feedback that we've heard from CDTA, really no issues that are limiting them or anything much more than issues that they would expect with a traditional diesel vehicle. And, you know, obviously one thing that everyone always talks about is battery range in the winter and the cold months. You know, CDTA hasn't really experienced, there is obviously a reduction in range, but it's nothing that's more significant than what they accounted for kind of from the beginning. So, you know, they've taken that into account, you know, before purchasing. I will say, so they're right now, the pilot entails them kind of running the 4 buses throughout all their routes. And, you know, they haven't completed kind of that initial pilot stage where the buses have run on all of the routes. So, you know, it's still kind of to be determined where they end up permanently. And I guess, you know, the one kind of takeaway that we got was that, you know, going in, again, range anxiety was one of their biggest concerns before they started. But now it's more apparent that power supply and delivery to, you know, really fuel a fleet that's much larger than the 4 that they already have is going to be a significant barrier moving forward. So, you know, we do have much kind of more detailed notes on these that, you know, we can't share publicly, that we will pass along to the Department of Energy, but those are kind of just the highlights of, you know, what we took away from those listening sessions this year. And I will try to keep an eye on the chat pod here. Let me see. David, good pilot. Will CDTA purchase more EVs? Electric bus will work in cold cities, Canada. Yeah, so I mean, right now, CDTA hasn't given us any kind of confirmed yes or no if they're going to be expanding, when they're going to be expanding. I think really all that I'm willing to say right now is that you know, they've had a positive experience, which, you know, I think says a lot. But I certainly plan on being in touch with CDTA more and kind of keeping a finger on the pulse of the pilot. And hopefully once they're done with the initial, you know, quote unquote pilot stage, you know, they'd be willing to give a presentation or speak to the group on their opinions. So I'm going to move on to our next piece, which is fuel and technology outreach and education events. So these events are, you know, this is where we kind of start to get into some of the setbacks that we've had with the pandemic this year. The listening sessions are, you know, kind of more one-on-one meetings that we do have in person, but having them over a Zoom call isn't significantly different, really. But these types of outreach and education events, we typically have, you know, really hands-on in-person types of meetings, whether it's, you know, day-long workshops in the office, or us going kind of out to farmers markets or neighborhood events with flyers and information to distribute, which obviously we couldn't have this year. So we kind of had to try to be creative and make the best of what we had. So first event or piece, I guess I'll call it, that we worked on this year was we did a Clean Communities electric vehicle ride and drive, which we filmed and distributed in September. So, you know, really the goal here was to try to gain awareness and education for the general consumer of an electric vehicle and really provide information that we would be providing in an in-person ride and drive. The event featured myself and Jen Saponis, who you heard from earlier, former coordinator and now coalition staff. They were leasing a BMW i3 and the lease went up and they haven't renewed. But at the time it was her personal vehicle. And, you know, we wanted to cover kind of all the pieces of technology and really did kind of a, you know, initial walk around to go over, like I said, the technology and range and all that, but also kind of highlight the differences, similarities and differences between driving an EV and driving a gasoline vehicle. And then, so after that initial walkthrough, we get in the car and do some driving around the Schenectady area to try and give the viewers that kind of in-person feel. Obviously, watching a video of driving an electric vehicle doesn't do justice to driving in one in person, but that's kind of what we had to work with. So we took this vehicle, or the video, and distributed it to our stakeholders. It was released on National Drive Electric Week, which we produced kind of a National Drive Electric Week flyer with some other information on EVs in the region. Posted to our MPO website and social media pages, and also our MPO YouTube site, which is kind of getting more use now than it has ever before, which I'm kind of going to get into some some ideas I have for that later on in the presentation. So the next topic or event that we did in this area is our electric, medium, and heavy duty vehicles in New York State webinar, which we co-hosted with the 5 other New York State Clean Cities coalitions. So the goal for this event was to really provide all of our stakeholders information on medium and heavy duty vehicles that are available today and that are available for New York State incentives, primarily through the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program and the New York City DOT Clean Trucks Program. It was a full day event broken up into 4 different sessions, where we kind of had a session for each specific topic area, whether it's funding incentives or vehicles or the charging infrastructure. And people could log in and out as they saw fit to really kind of hone in on the presentations that they were interested in. Presentations included CalStart, who presented on behalf of NYSERDA on the Truck Voucher Incentive Program, New York State DOT. We had Tim Ferguson from National Grid, who did a presentation similar to Ryan's, the one that we saw from Ryan today. And then we also had OEM, truck manufacturers, Lightning, E-Motors, Motive Power, Lion Electric, Orange EV, and BYD. And they gave presentations on the trucks that they're currently producing that are available for incentives through the state. And then to wrap up, we also had Wendell Engineering and Black & Veatch give presentations on the medium and heavy duty charging infrastructure work that they've done to date. And there was, as I mentioned, it was a day-long event. There was a lot there, but I will want to mention that the entire webinar recordings and individual presentations are available on the CDTC website, and I've added those links to the chat pod. If you scroll up to the top, I had put them there in the beginning. So feel free to check those out and pass them along to anyone that you might think would be interested. The third piece kind of for this topic area that we haven't done any work on this year is our Capital Region Mobility Hubs projects, which has been delayed due to COVID and kind of some holdups at NYSERDA. But we anticipate kind of working on this next year. This is, we're going to be providing assistance with outreach and education for this project. And so the Mobility Hubs project is essentially, we'll be looking to identify locations in the Capital District that could be successful in kind of providing a mobility hub, which would be a safe and accessible space where transit, walking, bike, ped, all of those modes can come together, and even ride sharing and potentially e-mobility options too. Convenient locations where all of those modes can come together, and you can transition from one to the other. The idea is that there's going to be some kind of high-level design work done, where a kind of standard design is developed that could be implemented in various locations throughout the region. And there's also the intent that at least one mobility hub will be implemented throughout that project. And again, so we're going to be working, hopefully be out in public if we can, looking optimistically maybe into next summer and getting to some of those farmers markets or neighborhood association meetings where we can promote this project and really kind of promote the idea of mobility hubs and what they could do for transportation in the region. The next kind of topic area that I'm looking at right now, so each year we try to do some site visits or educational tours. Of course now, this year at least, that's all virtual. Really it was kind of looking for a couple of these throughout the year and couldn't nail any down, but recently have come in contact with Precision Autogas, which is a propane biofuel conversion upfitter based out of Gainesville, New York. And we're going to be working with Precision and one of their clients, Mulhern Gas, on producing a fleet video, hopefully in the next few weeks, where we're going to highlight the fleet itself and the biofuel conversion process and kind of the benefits of transitioning to propane. We're going to wrap that up in a video and then also kind of incorporate it into a propane basics workshop. So Precision Autogas is, as I mentioned, a biofuel upfitter. And then Mulhern is actually a propane distributor down in Hudson, who has the fleet of vehicles. Like I said, so yeah, we're looking to wrap this up into a propane event early in 2021, and really looking to kind of target medium and light duty fleets where propane biofuel could really benefit them and offer them some cost savings compared to gasoline or diesel. So I mean, on this topic, I wanted to just kind of mention that we're looking for more kind of site visits and fleet visits to do next year. We kind of plan on working on this piece again, and be happy to hear any recommendations on other alternative fuel facilities or particular fleets that you all think might be useful for us to highlight. So if feel free to chime in or shoot me an email or shoot me a message in the chat if you have any ideas on that front. Next, so training and education piece. So this piece, we held one event, and it was our municipal electric vehicle readiness workshop, and we held this over 2 days in September. Kind of the difference between this piece and the other work that we were doing in the other kind of training and education, in the other category, we were really focusing on the fuel and the technology. However, in this workshop, the idea was really to gear it towards local governments, municipal employees, potentially zoning and planning board members. And the goal of the training was to kind of target planning and zoning techniques that could help municipalities kind of advance electric vehicle adoption. So we had presentations from WXY Architecture, who's really kind of an expert on planning and zoning tools related to electric vehicles. And they've worked with NYSERDA quite a bit on a lot of the documentation out there on this. So we had WXY Architecture, Plug-in Stations Online, a EV infrastructure installer who was really good at speaking to kind of the permitting do's and don'ts and what they found can really help installing electric vehicles or electric vehicle charging from kind of a developer standpoint, and kind of the regulations that can really put a hindrance on that and make it more difficult and kind of slow the installation of EV charging in a municipality. And we also heard from City of Glens Falls, who's recently installed about 10 EV charging stations in the downtown area. And they provided some great perspective on really navigating the incentives out there and what it's like installing this infrastructure and putting it in the ground on municipal property. ChargePoint also spoke at the webinar that, and they were able to provide information on once you have the infrastructure, what are the opportunities for municipalities to manipulate kind of the networking options, and how are you charging or how are you collecting money from the chargers if you choose to do so, and what are your options for kind of setting time limits on charging and that sort of thing. And then we kind of had the final presentation from NYSERDA to speak to the available incentives for the infrastructure itself. So with all that, again, like our electric truck webinar, the workshop kind of had quite a bit of information over 2 different days, and all of that, the full webinar recordings and individual presentations are again on our website, and links are provided in the chat box. That's all for this year that we're working on in 2020. And now I'm quickly going to go over what we're looking forward to in 2021. Again, I'll be posting these slides, so not only are the links in the chat box, but I posted them all here. So when the slides are posted, you could always follow the links through the slides. So what's next for 2021? So kind of, as I mentioned earlier, in 2020, obviously the pandemic kind of shifted the way that a lot of us do work, and really made me realize that, my digital outreach techniques were not up to snuff, and I really want to try to focus on that for the coalition in 2021. I know that our website, the Capital Clean Communities website, which is separate from our Capital District Transportation Committee website right now, is pretty dated, and there's little to no support on the back end side of things from a consultant to help us with updates if things go wrong, which makes it very difficult for us to keep up to date on the front end and provide you all with the best information out there. So I'm in the process of transitioning capitalcleancommunities.org to a series of pages on the CDTC website, and plan on keeping that URL to bring us to those pages. So doing that is going to make it easier for us to manage and keep up to date, and also hopefully kind of improve the traffic on those pages as well. Social media, right now I'll admit that I am not the greatest social media user, I guess, or I'm not the most technologically savvy when it comes to that. But so right now, anytime we do use social media, it is kind of channeled through our CDTC, Twitter and Instagram accounts. However, we do have a CDCC, a Clean Communities Coalition Twitter account that I plan on being much more active on in 2021, potentially starting an Instagram account as well, and hopefully trying to do some targeted social media specific campaigns. Also looking at starting a newsletter. So right now we kind of use our mailing list sporadically to make sure that we're updating our stakeholders on our upcoming events, or any potential funding opportunities that we see coming through. But I want to start doing something each month, or potentially twice a month, to really kind of make sure that our stakeholders are staying up to date on what we're doing. Other industry events going on that we may not be hosting, but we're certainly maybe attending ourselves, or that anything that we think might be useful to our alternative fuel stakeholders. Also, as I mentioned, there's a large kind of community of clean cities coalitions throughout the country, and we do know that our partner coalitions throughout New York State and even into New England and the Northeast are putting on events like ours throughout the year as well that could be useful to our stakeholders. So I want to start highlighting that stuff a bit more through a newsletter, as well as kind of doing a stakeholder spotlight where we try to highlight particular fleets throughout the year. So wanted to touch on that and really kind of ask anybody's opinions on, we think these are good things. If there's anything in particular with social media or the newsletter that would be good for me to incorporate, I'd be happy to hear comments or opinions on that. And then I guess the last two pieces, we have our annual report coming up, which each year we reach out to our stakeholders to get their annual greenhouse gas emissions reductions and fuel consumption of alternative fuel fleets. We then pass that along to Department of Energy, who again kind of wraps that up into reports for us at the coalition level and also at the nationwide level, so that there's documentation about alternative fuel use nationwide each year. So other than that, I'm always open to other project ideas for 2021. We're looking to do more of the same in terms of outreach events and education. We've done a lot on electric vehicles this year and looking to do, some propane early in 2021. Also want to, I know there's a lot of conversation out there on hydrogen. So, I'd like to try to incorporate some of that into next year's, kind of programs touch on what the latest is in hydrogen. And I know that we have Plug Power in the region who's doing a lot on that, in that kind of topics. So it'd be great to hear from them. So I'm going to be trying to work a little bit more on bringing in some maybe folks that we haven't heard from as much in years past. So that's all I have for 2021. Jill, I see your comment would recommend hiring an intern for social media. I've thought about that, and I'm still thinking about it. So I do think that social media is something that to really do well, you need a lot of time and resources to commit. But so I'm going to try to start slow and see how it goes on my own, and could potentially be looking for help. So you know, I'm going to finish up with some news around the table. You know, I'd be happy to hear from anyone on the call who's, you know, hear about the work that you're doing in the alt fuel space, or really any kind of updates or you know, piece of information that you might think would be helpful to the group.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jill.
I'm just a little delayed. So I guess we spoke very recently, and now that I'm looking at who's on the call, it's me and Todd and Tara and Ryan and Kate. So Kate, I owe you an email this week. I was going to reach out with some of the resources that I've been putting together for the program I work on. It's I work for the Capital District Regional Planning Commission on the Clean Energy Communities program, and we help municipalities with EV incentives for vehicles and infrastructure. So Tara or Todd will probably speak more to the new round of the program, but I don't have much to add. And I'll stop here because I don't know how good my audio is right now. So thanks.
Thank you, Jill. So I guess other than that, anyone else from CDRPC, any other kind of thoughts or comments on the clean energy communities with the latest update or?
This is Tara. Just kind of adding to what Jill said, basically, that we're just waiting on the newest round of the Clean Energy Communities program, which is going to fund some more match-free grants for communities, EV charging stations, and EV cars, as well as heavy-duty vehicles actually are going to be part of the program, is what we're hearing. So, and this is a municipal-based program. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that, and we'll share more as soon as we get the message from NYSERDA. So.
Great, thank you, Tara. So I think that seems like it might be it here for what's left on the call. So again, I really appreciate everyone joining us here this afternoon. Thank you for attending. As I mentioned, I'm going to be posting the recording and the presentation slides on our website. It might be a little bit because I am kind of overhauling it, and I'm trying to get a new space just for the meetings. So keep an eye out for that, and anyone, you know, if there's any other questions or thoughts about what I went over today, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. Thank you all.
Thanks. See you guys.
Thanks again, Ryan.
Thanks, everybody.
And Kate,
Yeah,
appreciate you being here.
Yep, had a great discussion. Have a good one, and happy holidays.
Thank you, too. Happy holidays.